Welcome to lesson 4 of anatomy and physiology, and this lesson is going to introduce you to the role of carbon dioxide in exercise and the control of blood flow. Please make notes in your green anatomy and physiology exercise books, and when we return to class we will review these. Be able to get a good understanding of what carbon dioxide is, what its role is, so you should be able to explain and analyse CO2 during exercise. You should also be able to explain and analyse the process of blood redistribution during exercise. You'll be developing skills of listening, so do listen to the video and add any extra notes as necessary. And do make sure that your skills of note taking are sufficient, that you've got detail and examples and good explanations in there as well. Role of carbon dioxide during exercise. So during exercise, when our muscles contract, we produce carbon dioxide as a byproduct of aerobic respiration. The energy systems is something that we're going to look at over the next few months. So just be aware at the minute that when our muscles contract aerobically and we use aerobic energy, carbon dioxide is a byproduct. A tiny amount of that carbon dioxide dissolves into the blood plasma, but most of that carbon dioxide that we produce when we're exercising is converted to something called carbonic acid, and this makes the blood more acidic and decreases its pH. As the muscles of the legs contract, so the hamstrings, the quadriceps, the gastrocnemius, etc., and they work aerobically as they're jogging towards that ball, carbon dioxide will be produced by the aerobic system. It's a waste product of the Krebs cycle. Again, don't worry too much about that detail yet, because we will go into it more when we look at energy systems as a topic. What can you remember detects the increased carbon dioxide? Well, the receptor that detects the increased carbon dioxide is the chemoreceptors. And actually what they're detecting is the increased acidity and the decreased pH of the blood. Remember, the blood's got acidic because the carbon dioxide's been converted into that carbonic acid. So the chemoreceptors spot that we've got an increase in carbon dioxide. They send an impulse to the medulla in the brain, and that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. Remember, the sympathetic nervous system speeds everything up. So in terms of the heart, it's going to send an impulse via the sympathetic nerve to the SA node. It's going to release adrenaline, and that's going to increase heart rate. So you can see just from that example there alone, carbon dioxide plays a really important role in making sure that our heart rate can increase. We've got enough oxygen going to where it needs to go. We need the carbon dioxide to help us increase heart rate when it's necessary. So it increases blood flow and gets more oxygen to the muscles. It also allows any waste products such as carbon dioxide to be transported to the lungs and be breathed out. Carbon dioxide also plays a role in something called oxygen dissociation. So oxygen dissociation is where oxygen that's in the hemoglobin as it gets towards the muscle pulls away, it dissociates from the hemoglobin into the muscle quicker. And it does this, one of the reasons that oxygen dissociation happens, the oxygen pulls away from the hemoglobin into the muscle quicker, is because carbon dioxide's joined the party. And that's increased the acidity and decreased the pH of the blood. So it helps get oxygen to the muscle quicker. We will do this as a topic, so don't worry if you don't fully understand that yet. Distribution during exercise. So during exercise, we need as much blood going to the muscles as we can. So blood ends up being redistributed away from the non-essential organs, such as the liver and the gut, and to the working muscles. And we call this the vascular shunt. The vascular shunt is a process of blood redistribution, and it's really important that we get more blood to the skeletal muscles so we've got oxygen so we can keep on exercising and waste products can be removed. You don't need to do anything with this image that's here on the board, but it's just a nice image to show you how during exercise, cardiac output increases hugely. So it goes from about 5 litres a minute at rest to about 25 litres per minute during exercise. You'll notice that the blood going to the brain, the blood volume going to the brain is the same in terms of litres, because we need a constant supply of oxygen going to the brain. But we see increases of blood flow to places like the heart, so we can keep the cardiac muscle beating. It also increases hugely at the skeletal muscle. So if you look at the skeletal muscle, it goes from about 0.75 to 1 litre a minute to about 20 to 21.25 litres a minute. So lots of oxygen getting to those skeletal muscles. You'll notice the decrease is in places like the liver and the gut and the digestive system they can get away with lower levels of oxygen during exercise. The control of blood flow during exercise. So we've done this already, but let's go over it again and make sure we've got some notes. So as your muscles contract, the chemoreceptors detect the increased acidity and decreased pH of the blood. Remember, that's because we've got more carbon dioxide in the blood. That's been converted to that carbonic acid. So the chemoreceptors are detecting that increased acidity. They send impulses to the vasomotor control center in the medulla of the brain. So this time, rather than looking at heart rate control, which was the cardiac control center of the medulla, we're now looking at the control of blood flow. So the chemoreceptors send impulses to the medulla. These are picked up by the vasomotor control center. Send messages to the arterioles. These are the tiny arteries that just go just before we get to the capillaries. And what they'll do is they'll tell the arteries that are near the skeletal muscle to open up, so for the muscles in the wall to relax, so we can get lots of blood flood into that area. For the non-working areas, the non-working muscles, or maybe the liver or the gut, we'll ask the muscles in those arterioles to contract, to constrict, so the blood can't get there. So we're flushing it to the muscles, but we're taking it away from the areas that it's not really needed at yet. So you need to know the terminology for this. So the vasomotor control center will send impulses to the arterioles, causing vasodilation and opening up of the arterioles that feed the working muscles. We also have that happening at the skin as well. And this is so there's more blood and oxygen available at the muscles and to help the skin cool down. In the areas where we consider them to be non-essential organs, we don't really need them during exercise, we'll have vasoconstriction. So the medulla, the vasomotor control center, will send a message to the muscles in the walls of the arterioles to close up, to contract and close up. And this will restrict blood flow to those areas. The final thing is that the sympathetic nerve impulses will also send impulses to the precapillary sphincters. So these are rings of muscle at the opening of the capillaries. So if you imagine you've got your arteries sending oxygenated blood, your arterioles sending oxygenated blood, and the point of gaseous exchange at the muscles is where we've got the capillaries. And just between the arterioles and the capillaries, you've got these precapillary sphincters, which are rings of muscle. So they also help with blood redistribution. So where we want to increase blood flow at the skeletal muscle, these will relax and open up, so they'll flood the area, the capillaries feeding the muscles with lots of oxygenated blood, and then they'll constrict at the non-essential organs and the non-essential muscles to restrict blood flow. To know about is how blood flow to different areas is affected during exercise. So if we have a quick look at the table, to the non-essential organs, blood flow decreases, and that's because of vasoconstriction. The coronary vessels, so these are the blood vessels that feed the cardiac muscle, we have an increase in blood flow because we need lots of oxygenated blood for that cardiac muscle to keep beating fast. We also have an increase of blood flow to the skin. So we'll have vasodilation of the arterioles at the skin, and the precapillary sphincters will relax to make sure that we can regulate temperature and cool down. And we have increased blood flow at the working muscles to get plenty of oxygen to where it's needed. The brain will always stay the same, so it always has a constant supply of oxygen to maintain its function.